and pharyngeal end. Okay, now it is 36 millimeter long. It is directed downward, forwards, and medially, forming 45 degree with the horizontal, and it opens in the nasopharynx. Okay, so in this slide also you can see another picture. This is the picture of the nasopharynx, where you can see posterior end of the septum, posterior ends of the turbinates, and there is a opening from of the eustachian tube, which is again there's a swelling like protrusion that is made up of torus tuberis. Okay, now it has bony part that makes 1/3 of the tube, that is 12 millimeter of total 36 millimeter. Posterior medial part is bony and opens in the anterior wall of the tympanic cavity. Now another part is fibrocartilaginous part, which is 2/3 of the total length, is 24 millimeter. It is on the anterior medial side and formed by single cartilage folded upon itself, forming medial part of the lateral lamina and roof. Now, in the pharyngeal end, there's a slit-like opening, and cartilage at this end is elevated, making this bulging in this picture, that is known as torus tuberis, and opens 1 to 1.25 centimeter behind the posterior end of the inferior turbinate. Now you will be like so much new to all these terms, turbinates, nasal septum, as you have completed your anatomy and physiology. You must remember all these terms. Okay, now if you go into the anatomy of nose, inside the nasal cavity there are 3 turbinates. Okay, so among them the lowest one, inferior one, is inferior turbinate, and the eustachian tube opens 1 to 1.25 centimeter behind or posterior to the inferior end of the inferior turbinate in the nasopharynx. Okay, and there's a part known as isthmus, which means there is a junction of bony and the cartilaginous part. Now, muscles related to eustachian tube. There are 2 muscles mainly: tensor belli palatini and tensor levator belli palatini, and another one is salpingopharyngeus. Okay, now tensor belli palatini, the medial fibers of tensor belli palatini is attached to the lateral lamina of the tube. Okay, and contraction of this muscle opens tubal lumen. Okay, so it is a dilator one. Okay, now another one is levator belli palatini. The exact role in opening of the tube is uncertain, but it runs inferior and parallel to the cartilaginous part of the tube, forming a bulk under the medial lamina. Okay, so this in the tube, this is the area for levator belli palatini. Okay, and this is the area for tensor belli palatini. Now contraction of this muscle will open the tube. Okay. Now another one is salpingopharyngeus. The two, this is another muscle which has similar effect action like levator belli palatini. Now another one is elastic hinge. Junction of medial and lateral lamina at the roof of the cartilage is rich in elastin fibers, which forms a hinge. Okay, it helps in keeping the tube closed when dilator muscles are not active. Now another one is Osman pads of fat. This is a mass of fatty tissue related lateral to the membranous part of cartilaginous tube. It helps to keep the tube closed and protect it from the reflux of nasopharyngeal secretion. Okay, so here in this picture, there's a different parts of the opening of eustachian tube. This muscle is tensor belli palatini, which when contracts retracts this part of the eustachian tube and opens the tube. And below there is the Osman part of fat, and this is levator belli palatini. Okay, so it also has similar action like a dilator of the tube. Okay, see, contraction will open the tube. Okay, now lining of eustachian tube. It is lined by pseudostratified ciliated columnar epithelium interspersed with mucus secreting goblet cells. Submucosa in the cartilaginous part is rich in seromucinous gland. Cilia beats towards the nasopharynx because One of the important function of eustachian tube is to clear the middle ear secretion and to ventilate the middle ear, right?
Ma'am, also to mute voice sound.
The disease in the middle ear is more because of the anatomical variation of the eustachian tube. Okay, so about the length of the eustachian tube, it is 13 to 18 millimeter in infant, whereas 36 millimeter in adult. Direction, it is more horizontal, makes only 10 degree to the horizontal, and it becomes of adult size at 7 years or more, and in adult it is 45 degree. Angulation of the isthmus, there is no angulation, and there's angulation present in that. So this is also important because any reflux of the pharynx can go up into the ear and cause middle ear disease. Okay, bony versus cartilaginous part, slightly longer than the one third, and is one.
मैम उसको माइक म्यूट सर.
Hello.
हजुर मैम सुनिरहेको छ.
Sunil. So, so did you get to know about this difference between infant and the adult eustachian tube?
हजुर मैम त्यही पढ्दै पढ्दै रोकेको थियो, म्युट भएको थियो.
So we'll start with this. Okay. Now, length is, it is shorter in infant, and is direction is more horizontal. Angulation is less. The bony and the cartilaginous part is longer in the ratio is longer in the infant. Tuber cartilage is flaccid in infant. Density of elastin at the hinge is less in infant and more in adult, and osment pad of fat is also less in volume in infant. So all of this makes middle ear of infant, it is like it makes the ear more prone to the reflux from the nasopharynx, and also infection from the nasopharynx can ascend easily into the middle ear in the infant. So that will make infants more prone to the diseases. Okay, now function of eustachian tube. Main function is ventilation and regulation of middle ear pressure. Now, pressure on two sides of the tympanic membrane should be equal for normal hearing. Now, normally the tube remains closed and opens intermittently during swallowing. Now, tubal opening is less efficient in recumbent position due to venous engorgement. Okay. Now, all of this is poor in infant and young children. That is why there are so many cases of ear discharge in the infants and the children. Now, another protective function of the eustachian tube is normally the tube remains closed, which protects the ear against high sound pressure. So another one is it also prevents reflux of the nasopharyngeal secretion. Okay. Now, clearance of the middle ear secretion. Cilia beats in the direction of nasopharynx, thus helps to clear the secretion and debris from the middle ears towards nasopharynx. Now, how do you assess the function of eustachian tube? How do you know that patient has eustachian tube disorder? Now, first of the test that is done in the OPD setting is Valsalva test. Positive build in the nasopharynx so that air enters into the eustachian tube by asking the patient to close the nose, pinch the nose, and to increase the pressure in the oral cavity. Okay, so it should be avoided in case of thin TM or heel TM. Okay, now only 65% are able to perform this test. Okay, so it is not 100% reliable now. Now another one is Politzer test. It is commonly done in children. There's the olive-shaped tip of the Politzer bag is introduced into the patient nostril on the side of which the test is desired, and another nostril is closed. Now the bag is compressed at the same time when the patient swallows or say ik, 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 and air is auscultated. And if the hissing sound is heard, then the tube is patent. Okay. Another one is catheterization. Nose is anesthetized with the top surface of the septum, then we turn it 180 degree laterally. Okay, and a Politzer bag is connected to the catheter and air is insufflated. Entry of air into the middle ear is verified by an auscultation tube. Now, during this procedure, sometimes there can be injury to the nasopharynx and eustachian tube opening. Okay, so that is very dangerous. Another one is Toynbee's test. It is a test where patient is asked to pinch the nose and to swallow. Okay, so it will create a negative suction in the middle ear. Okay, and otoscopy is done at the same time to check if the tympanic membrane moves. Okay, now another one is tympanometry. Here there's a device which is put into the ear canal, and positive and negative pressure are created in extra-aortic canal, and patient swallows repeatedly. Ability to equilibrate positive and negative pressure to the ambient pressure indicates normal tubal function. Okay. Now another one is radiological test, where a radio-opaque dye is instilled into the middle ear through the existing perforation. X-ray taken should delineate the tube and any obstruction. Time taken to reach the nasopharynx indicates its clearance function. Okay, but it is not so much commonly done nowadays. Another one is saccharin test. It is similar to the radiographic test, where saccharin solution is placed in the middle ear through the existing perforation, and time taken by it to reach the pharynx and impart sweet taste measures the clearance function. Similarly, methylene blue is used, and time taken by it to stain the pharynx is noted in instilling eardrops. Another one is sonotubometry. A tone is presented into the nose, and it's recording taken from the external canal. Tone is heard louder when the tube is patent, and it also tells the duration for which the tube remains open. Now, there are different types of disorder in relation with the eustachian tube. Sometimes the eustachian tube disorder does not only remain into the eustachian tube, it makes the middle ear more prone to infections and diseases. Okay. Now, disorders are tubal blockage. Normally, eustachian tube is closed, only opens intermittently during swallowing, yawning, and sneezing. But if the tube is blocked, oxygen is absorbed first, followed by CO2 and nitrogen diffusion into the blood, resulting in negative pressure in the middle ear and retraction of the tympanic membrane. Okay. Further negative pressure causes locking of the tube with the collection of transudate and later exudate and hemorrhage. Now, see in this picture, you can see if the tube is blocked, the air, this middle ear cavity is not properly ventilated. So the air that is there is then it goes to the negative pressure, okay? And that will lead to retraction of the tympanic membrane. Now, if it keeps on, if the blockage continues, then there will be later formation of hemorrhage or transudate formation in the middle ear. Okay, that will make a fluid formation of fluid in the middle ear. Okay, so if that continues, then there can be acute otitis media or otitis media with effusion. Or if it gets infected and makes the perforation in the tympanic membrane, then chronic suppurative otitis media. So, staging tube has a very great role in pressure maintenance of the middle ear. Not only that, also hearing mechanism. Now, the same thing, if the prolongation of the tubal blockage is there, then there is development of thin watery fluid in the middle ear that we have talked about. And sometimes it can retract the tympanic membrane medially, and that can be retracted so hard that there will be atelectatic tympanic membrane or ear, okay? That will again cause retraction pocket cholesteatoma, and then there will be so many other complications like cholesteatoma will cause bone erosion, and then will be a primary part for the formation of cholesteatoma in the middle ear. Now, it can again, if the tympanic membrane is not in place and is retracted medially, then that pressure can also erode the bones that is there in the middle ear. Now, what are the different causes of eustachian tube obstruction? Eustachian tube obstruction can be mechanical or functional. Okay, mechanical means intrinsic or inflammation of or the allergy. Functional means collapse of the tube or the both. Okay, now causes of eustachian tube obstructions are upper respiratory tract infection, allergy, sinusitis, nasal mass or polyp, deviated nasal septum, hypertrophic adenoids, nasopharyngeal mass, cleft palate, submucous cleft palate, Down syndrome, and sometimes functional. Now, what are the different symptoms of eustachian tube dysfunction? First will be mild to severe otalgia. Sometimes patient may present to, hello? Azul? Sunila? Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Now, see, the causes of eustachian tube are already spoken. Now, the symptoms might be hearing loss, otalgia, popping sensation in the ear or clicking sensation in the ear. Sometimes patient might come with tinnitus, disturbance of equilibrium or vertigo. Okay, so if there is this symptom, then you always have to ask about all the predisposing factors of eustachian tube like URTI, allergy, mass. Okay, what are the different signs of eustachian tube dysfunction? That can be when you do examine the tympanic membrane by otoscopy, then there will be retraction of tympanic membrane, congestion along the handle of malleus and pars tensa, transudate behind the tympanic membrane. That is, fluid is air fluid level is seen in the middle ear cavity. Okay, and color of the tympanic membrane also varies. It might be gray or bluish in color, and bluish or dull in color, and conductive hearing loss, and sometimes there can be blood in the middle ear due to persistent negative pressure. Now, there's a very important role of adenoids in maintaining the eustachian tube function, because as the adenoid is present in the nasopharynx, if it grows mainly in the toddlers, if it grows in size that is very big, and if it occludes the pharyngeal end of the eustachian tube, then there it can cause mechanical obstruction. And not only that, infection in adenoid can act as reservoir for pathogenic organisms, leading to acute otitis media and chronic otitis media with effusion. And in case of allergy, mast cells of the adenoid tissue release inflammatory mediators, leading to tubal blockage. Okay. Now, another one is cleft palate and ET dysfunction. Whenever there is a cleft palate, the function of the eustachian tube is always impaired because of its anatomical disturbance, because there will be abnormality of the torus tuberis. Tensor valley-palatine muscle does not insert into the torus tuberis. Not only that, after the repair of the cleft palate, palate, grommet insertion may be required because the stretching tube is not properly maintained in the is also along with cleft palate, and not sometime, most of the time. Now another is otitis media with effusion, which is very common if there is a cleft palate leading to stretching tube dysfunction. Now presence of Down syndrome, whenever there is a Down syndrome, there is a poor stretching tube function seen due to poor tone of tensor veli palatini and abnormal shape of the nasopharynx, because the head and neck development is very poor in case of Down syndrome. So these patients are more prone to otitis media, not only OME, acute otitis media, chronic otitis media, anything can happen. Okay. Now, if the stretching tube function is not maintained, there is always a formation of retraction pocket. That is the first change that occurs due to blockage of the stretching tube function. Then that retraction pocket will then go into, if that persists, then there will be a tympanic membrane will be retracted so much that it reaches the medial wall, leading to zero space in the middle ear. Okay, so that can again in a long run can make a acquired cholesteatoma. Okay, so this is the important thing about the stretching tube function. Now sometimes there can be patulous stretching tube which is abnormally patent. Okay, it is like idiopathic but does not occur so often, but it is seen in people with rapid weight loss, in pregnancy, and in some cases of multiple sclerosis. Patient complains of hearing his own voice, that is autophony, and movement of tympanic membrane is seen with inspiration and expiration, and acute condition of patulous tube is self-limiting, like sometimes it can occur suddenly. And weight gain, oral administration of potassium iodide is helpful. Long-standing cases may require cauterization of the tube or grommet insertion, okay, to maintain the air atmospheric pressure in the middle layer. Now, how do we examine the stretching tube? For the examination of the pharyngeal end, we can simply insert a posterior rhinoscopy mirror, that is done posterior rhinoscopy, that there's a small mirror which is introduced into the nasopharynx through the oral cavity, and the pharyngeal end is inspected. It is very difficult to do, and it is commonly done in OPD regularly. And another one is rigid nasal endoscope, where the endoscope is inserted from the nose and the nasopharynx is examined. Okay. Now another one is, if there's a tympanic membrane perforation, then we can examine the tympanic end of the stretching tube through the microscope or endoscope. Okay, so this is all about stretching tube, and I hope you go through your book and get it more clear, because we are not like in a real class, so distractions are more in this virtual class, right? So I wish you all the best, and please go through the book. Okay, thank you, class.